This is a conversation with Dr. Sugata Mitra, who is the author of the hole-in-the-wall experiment. Dr. Mitra, a few years ago, a friend of mine showed me a medieval medallion showing a professor teaching students, but the students were skulls. That's a very gloomy idea of education. But that's the kind of education we have been having for centuries. What has changed, or what has been changing?
Well, I suppose that picture of education of one person speaking to many was the model for thousands of years for a very specific reason, which is that knowledge could not be stored outside of the biological system. Ever since we became human, knowledge was through experience or through observation. It was inside the brain. We didn't actually have a mechanic or a mechanics for transferring that onto any other medium. So we had no choice. If you know something and I need to know that, I have no choice but to say to you, please tell me. But somewhere along the line, the Phoenicians changed that. And they started to make scratch marks on rock. And for the first time, knowledge went outside the body. So then came writing, and you would say that, well, why didn't the system end then? But it still didn't end because you could read and not understand. So then you have to go back to that man and say, yes, I read it, but I don't understand. And he says, okay, I'll explain it to you. So he remained. The teacher then changed from saying, I'll tell you, you listen. He then changed to saying, I'll tell you which books to read and in what order. Because books don't tell you that. If you read a book, the book doesn't say, now go and read this one. Most books don't. Then books dematerialized and became bits, ones and zeros. Not only that, they had no physical form anymore. You could now store knowledge as symbols in electronics. And most importantly, came the idea that bits of knowledge can point at other bits of knowledge. So now the books were pointing at other books. The teacher then said to the student, well, but how do you know where to start? That's where we are right now. From the days when we used to walk into class and say, I'll tell you, to a much more tenuous, tentative situation of saying, look, it's not as though you don't need me anymore. You do need me. I'll have to tell you where to start and where to end. It's not going to last very long, but we'll see where it goes.
That is not a happy perspective for teachers.
I wouldn't say that, really. I tend to look at it quite optimistically. You must remember, I am a teacher myself. I think we'll have to find other things to do which makes learning possible more efficiently. Somebody is still needed to do that. So it's not a question of being redundant. It's a question of going from the driver to the fellow who makes the rules of the game. And perhaps going next to one level higher, to the person who decides in what way knowledge should exist. We become the keepers of that vast network of knowledge. At least that's what I think we should become.
And in that context, do you feel comfortable with the title teacher?
No. I never felt comfortable with the title teacher. In fact, every time I hear it, I shiver back from my school days. But yeah, teacher does something which perhaps is not needed anymore. The teacher teaches. Now we have things that can teach, and we have environments that can teach, and we have learners that can teach each other. So we have many different mechanisms by which this can happen. So I don't like the word teacher.
Having said that, do you have a favorite teacher? Did you have a favorite teacher?
Of course, all of us did, I think. All of us can look back at our school days and think of a teacher that we really, really loved. And invariably, it would have been a teacher who didn't lead us from the front, but who stood at the back and watched as we went. It's always been that way, I think.
I heard you said that schools enable empires. What do you mean by that?
You know, empires in the last 400 or 500 years and before rely heavily on people to do administration. You need police, you need military, you need priests and nuns and clerks, factory workers. You need a machine that produces each of these people. The school is that factory, or was that factory, which produced these people. And these people all had a particular requirement, a very, in its own way, a very inhuman requirement. They required everybody to be exactly identical to everybody else. And in retrospect, yes, indeed, you need it. If you're building a machine with people, then the spare parts will also be people. So you would replace one with the other. The schooling system, therefore, focused on the median. How do you get everyone to be similar? It's hard, we know, and it never succeeds 100%. You get a few really good, you get a few really bad. But by and large, it's a very efficient system for mass producing similar people. And this is what fed the empires.
What are the current main challenges for educators?
It's not going to be easy, this one, this time around. We have a couple of old established norms. We have curriculum. We have pedagogy, which is the method. And we have assessment. I think all three need re-examination. Curriculum. How do you make curriculum for an age where things can change not even day by day, but minute by minute? If you look at the solid state sciences, if you look at what's happening to biology, if you look even at what's happening to art because of technology, the changes are from moment to moment. You cannot have a curriculum that needs changing once every 10 years or once every 50 years. In the 18th century, curricula used to be changed every 50 years. In the 19th, every 10. We cannot have that system anymore because the nature of knowledge has changed. So who is going to make that new curriculum? What is that new curriculum? Will there be one? Or will it be something that forms itself? We don't know. Pedagogy, it was a simple issue of from teacher to student, drill and practice, etc. That's gone. If you want to write an app for a cell phone or a tablet phone that has come into the market day before yesterday, you cannot find a curriculum, nor can you find a teacher. Your only pedagogy can be the internet. You have to learn from somewhere. And you better do it fast, because others will beat you to it. That's a pedagogy which we didn't know at all. We couldn't even have imagined 20 years ago. And finally comes assessment. How on earth do you assess? Assessment used to be simple. I give you a multiplication to do, you give me the answer. I look at two things. How long did you take? And is the answer correct? And then I tick off. That doesn't apply anymore to many different situations. I could ask you, how tall is the Eiffel Tower? If you don't remember, then I would say that's very poor. because it was taught by me. But today you would say, why are you asking me? Why don't you ask your tablet phone? It will tell you in 3 seconds how tall the Eiffel Tower is. So you can't ask that question anymore. It doesn't matter. It's a meaningless question. What you could ask is, why was the Eiffel Tower built? Now, that's not an easy question. You still can find it from the internet, but who is going to evaluate the answer? Because it may not be a straightforward answer. There may be different opinions on it. We've always avoided situations where an answer could have different versions. And we've always tried to focus on an answer which is mechanical and the same each time. But that's exactly what computers are for. So there's no point building assessment systems based on that. We need to review assessment. It's a long task, but I think it's a task that should be done by the oldest, the biggest, the most respected universities on the planet. It's their duty to make that change.
Finally, Dr. Mitra, if someone approaches you and asks something like, could you give me a piece of advice? I want to be an educator for freedom. Can you provide a piece of advice?
I'm not a very effective person to ask that question to. Because if you ask me, how can I become an educator for freedom? Or if you ask me almost anything, my usual answer is, what do you think? What should you be doing? And if you say, I don't know, then I would say, that's really interesting. Why don't you know? And so on and so forth. The reason for that is because I need to illustrate that you don't need me for answers. You have answers everywhere. You need me for questions. That's my job. And I will ask you those questions.
Dr. Mitra, thank you very much for sharing these ideas and experiences with us. And thank you too.